I was packing my diploma into a cardboard box when my sister handed me the eviction notice. Not a joke. Not a misunderstanding. An actual legal document with my name typed in cold, impersonal letters across the top. 30 days to vacate the premises. The apartment I'd helped her pay for. The home I'd cleaned, organized, and filled with warmth while she climbed her corporate ladder. "It's nothing personal, Maya," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I just need my space back." I stood there in my graduation dress, the one I'd saved for months to buy, holding that piece of paper like it might explode. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, not yet. From disbelief. From the kind of hurt that starts in your chest and spreads like ice water through your veins. "Rachel, I just graduated today." Today. She shrugged, scrolling through her phone. "And I'm really proud of you. But this was always temporary, remember? You knew you couldn't stay forever." Temporary. The word tasted bitter. 3 years of temporary. 3 years of waking up at 5 in the morning to clean the apartment before my classes. 3 years of tiptoeing around her schedule, her friends, her life. 3 years of being grateful for the scraps of space she allowed me in her world. I'd moved in with Rachel right after our parents died. Car accident on a rainy Tuesday, the kind of tragedy that doesn't feel real even when you're standing at the funeral. I was 19, just starting college, and suddenly orphaned. Rachel was 26, already established in her career, already living the life I'd dreamed about, successful, independent, confident. She'd opened her door to me that night, and I thought she was saving my life. "You can stay with me," she'd said, pulling me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume. "We'll get through this together." Together. Another word that meant something different to her than it did to me. I paid rent. Not much, she called it a contribution, but I paid it religiously, even when it meant eating ramen for dinner 4 nights a week. I cleaned, I stayed out of her way, I made myself small and quiet and grateful. Because that's what you do when someone saves you, right? You shrink yourself down to fit into the space they give you. I'd just finished 4 years of brutal study. Engineering degree, top of my class, endless nights fueled by coffee and determination. I'd done it all while living in her shadow, celebrating my victories in whispers so I wouldn't disturb her conference calls. And now, on the day I finally achieved my dream, she was kicking me out. "Rachel, can we at least talk about this? Maybe I can stay another few months while I find a job and save up for." "The notice is 30 days, Maya." "That's generous." Generous. I almost laughed. Would have, if my throat wasn't so tight with unshed tears. "I've been nothing but helpful to you," I said quietly. "I've respected your space, paid my share, stayed invisible when you needed me to." "What changed?" She finally looked up from her phone, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Discomfort? It was gone before I could name it. Nothing changed. This was always the plan. You graduated, you move out. It's called growing up. Growing up. As if I hadn't grown up the day I became an orphan. As if I hadn't grown up every single day I swallowed my pride and thanked her for letting me sleep in her spare bedroom. I wanted to scream. To throw that notice in her face and demand the sister I used to know, the one who braided my hair before school and snuck me cookies when I was sad. But that sister had disappeared somewhere between her first promotion and her corner office. So I just nodded. Folded the notice carefully. Placed it in the box with my diploma. "Okay," I said. 30 days. She looked almost surprised that I didn't fight harder. "Okay. Good. I knew you'd understand." I didn't understand. I didn't understand anything about who she'd become. The graduation ceremony had been earlier that afternoon. I'd sat in that auditorium surrounded by families, parents weeping with pride, siblings cheering, grandparents waving signs. I'd sat there alone, because Rachel had texted me an hour before to say she couldn't make it. Work emergency. Always a work emergency. I'd walked across that stage, accepted my diploma, heard my name called out to scattered applause from strangers. And I'd smiled, because what else could I do? I'd spent 4 years working toward this moment, and it felt hollow without anyone there to share it. But I told myself it was fine. I'd celebrate with Rachel later, I thought. She'd take me to dinner, maybe, or we'd open a bottle of wine and toast to new beginnings. Instead, I got an eviction notice. That night, I lay in my bedroom, the spare room with the creaky door and the window that didn't quite close, and let myself cry. Not loud, dramatic sobs. Just silent tears that soaked into my pillow as I stared at the ceiling and wondered how I'd become so alone. I thought about my parents. What would they think if they could see us now? Would they be disappointed in Rachel's coldness? Would they be disappointed in me for accepting it? I thought about all the times I'd defended Rachel to myself. She's just busy. She's under pressure. She's not good with emotions. I'd made excuses for her behavior for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to expect more. The next morning, I started job hunting in earnest. I'd been casually looking before, sending out applications here and there, but now I had a deadline. 30 days to find a job, find an apartment, find a way to start over. Again. I spent my days glued to my laptop, filling out application after application. Entry-level engineering positions, internships, anything that might lead somewhere. My inbox stayed mostly empty except for automated rejection emails. Rachel barely spoke to me. She'd leave for work before I woke up and come home after I'd already retreated to my room. When we did cross paths, she was polite but distant, like I was a house guest whose welcome had worn out. Maybe that's all I'd ever been to her. A guest. An obligation inherited from our parents. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. My savings account was down to $300. I had interviews, a few promising ones, but nothing concrete. Nothing that would start before my 30 days were up. I started looking at rooms for rent in sketchy neighborhoods, calculating whether I could afford a deposit, wondering if I'd end up sleeping in my car. On day 26, Rachel had a work event. Some fancy corporate dinner she'd been preparing for all week. She spent an hour getting ready, transforming herself into the polished, powerful version of herself that I barely recognized anymore. "Don't wait up," she said, checking her reflection one last time. "These things usually run late." I didn't respond. I was too tired, too defeated, too numb from weeks of rejection and uncertainty. She paused at the door. "Maya, I know this has been hard, but you'll thank me later. You need to stand on your own feet. This is good for you." Then she was gone, leaving me alone with her justifications and my despair. I spent that evening doing what I'd done every evening for the past 3 weeks, searching for jobs, sending applications into the void, trying to ignore the panic rising in my chest every time I looked at the calendar. 4 days left. I'd almost given up hope when my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered it anyway, desperate enough to take any chance. "Is this Maya Hartley?" The voice was professional, male, unfamiliar. "Yes, this is she. Ms. Hartley, this is David Chin from Apex Innovations. We received your application for the junior engineering position, and we'd like to offer you an interview. Tomorrow, if possible. We're looking to fill this position urgently." My heart jumped. Apex Innovations. One of the biggest tech companies in the city. I'd applied there weeks ago and assumed they'd passed on me. Yes, absolutely. Tomorrow works perfectly. Thank you so much. He gave me the details, 10 a.m., downtown office, ask for him at reception. I wrote everything down with shaking hands, hardly believing my luck. Maybe things were finally turning around. The next morning, I dressed in my only interview suit, the one I'd bought secondhand and had tailored to fit. I arrived at the Apex building 20 minutes early, too anxious to risk being late. The lobby was impressive, all glass and steel and modern art. I gave my name at reception, and the woman directed me to the 15th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. I practiced my answers, my smile, my handshake. This had to go well. It had to. David Chin met me in the hallway, warm and professional. He led me to a conference room where two other people were waiting, a woman in her 40s and a younger man with thick-rimmed glasses. The interview went better than I'd dared hope. They asked about my projects, my skills, my goals. I answered honestly, passionately, letting my love for engineering shine through. They nodded, made notes, asked follow-up questions that suggested genuine interest. After 45 minutes, David smiled. Maya, I'm impressed. Your portfolio is exceptional, especially for a recent graduate. I think you'd be a great fit for our team. Really? I couldn't hide my surprise. Really? I'd like to invite you to meet the rest of the team. We're actually having a small celebration today. One of our senior directors is receiving an award. If you're free this evening, it would be a great opportunity for you to see our company culture in action. This evening. Rachel's work event was this evening. But this was important, this was my future. I'd love to, I said. He gave me the details. 7 p.m., a hotel ballroom downtown, business casual attire. I'll text you the exact address. And Maya? Welcome to Apex. Pending the final paperwork, of course, but I have a good feeling about this. I floated out of that building. Actually floated. After weeks of rejection and desperation, something was finally going right. I spent the afternoon preparing, picking out the nicest dress I owned, not the graduation dress, something simpler, and trying to calm my nerves. This wasn't just about the job anymore. This was about proving to myself that I could do it. That I didn't need Rachel's roof over my head or her begrudging charity. I could stand on my own feet, just like she wanted. The hotel ballroom was elegant, filled with well-dressed professionals mingling with wine glasses and appetizers. I found David near the entrance, and he immediately introduced me around, making me feel welcomed despite being the newest face in the room. The ceremony will start in about 20 minutes, he explained. Our director, Ms. Hartley, is receiving the Innovation Leadership Award. It's a big deal. She's the youngest person to ever win it. Ms. Hartley. Same last name as me. I almost mentioned the coincidence but decided it didn't matter. The lights dimmed, and everyone moved toward the rows of chairs facing a small stage. David guided me to a seat near the front. You'll want a good view of this. A man in a suit took the stage, microphone in hand. He started with pleasantries, thanking everyone for coming, talking about the importance of innovation and leadership. Then he said, and now, to accept the Innovation Leadership Award, please join me in welcoming the brilliant, dedicated, and truly exceptional Director of Strategic Development at Apex Innovations, Ms. Rachel Hartley. The room erupted in applause. And my sister walked onto that stage. Rachel. My Rachel. Wearing the same dress she'd worn when she left for her work event. Smiling that confident, professional smile I knew so well. But it wasn't the same Rachel who'd handed me an eviction notice. This Rachel was glowing, accomplished, celebrated. This Rachel was receiving an award for innovation leadership while I sat in the audience, invisible, a secret she didn't even know had been revealed. My brain couldn't process it. David leaned over and whispered, "That's my boss. Amazing woman. I can't wait for you to work with her." Work with her. I was being hired to work under Rachel. Rachel, who'd told me nothing about working at Apex. Rachel, who'd kicked me out of her apartment. Rachel, who didn't know I was sitting 20 feet away, watching her accept this award. She started her speech, thanking her team, talking about challenges and triumphs, making jokes that had the audience laughing. She was charismatic, inspiring, everything a leader should be. And I understood, suddenly and completely, why she'd evicted me. Not because she needed space. Not because I was a burden. Because she was about to hire me, had maybe already decided to hire me, and she needed to establish boundaries. Professional boundaries. She couldn't have her little sister living with her while supervising her at work. It would look like nepotism. It would undermine both of us. She'd kicked me out to protect my career. The realization hit me like a physical force. All those weeks of pain and confusion, all that hurt and betrayal, it was her trying to help me in the most Rachel way possible. Practical. Logical. Emotionally incompetent, but with good intentions buried somewhere underneath. She hadn't told me because she wanted me to get the job on my own merit. She'd stayed distant because she was establishing professional boundaries. She'd pushed me away to pull me forward. It was the most backwards, thoughtless, hurtful way to help someone. It was so completely Rachel. The speech ended. More applause. Rachel stepped off the stage, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. She hadn't seen me yet, I was just another face in the crowd. David stood. "Come on, let me introduce you to her officially." My legs felt like water, but I followed him through the crowd. Rachel was surrounded by admirers, that professional smile fixed on her face. David waited for a break in the conversation, then stepped forward. "Ms. Hartley, I'd like you to meet Maya Hartley, no relation, funny coincidence, our newest team member. She interviewed brilliantly this morning. I think she's going to be a real asset." Rachel turned toward me, and our eyes met. I watched the color drain from her face. Watched her professional mask crack. Watched her mouth open, close, open again. "Maya," she breathed. "Hello, Rachel." I kept my voice steady, professional. Two could play this game. David looked between us, confused. "Wait, you two know each other?" "She's my sister," I said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. Other people nearby had heard, were turning to stare. Rachel's carefully constructed professional world was colliding with her personal life in the worst possible way. She'd evicted me to avoid nepotism, and here we were anyway, exposed in front of her entire company. "You didn't tell me you'd applied here," she said finally, and I could hear the accusation in her voice, as if I'd done this on purpose. "You didn't tell me you worked here," I countered. "Actually, you didn't tell me much of anything lately. Just handed me an eviction notice and wished me luck growing up." David shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we should discuss this somewhere private." "No." Rachel's voice was sharp. Then softer, "No, it's fine. Maya, can we talk? Alone?" She led me to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the curious stares and whispered conversations. When she turned to face me, she looked nothing like the confident director from 2 minutes ago. She looked like my sister again, scared, uncertain, human. I'm sorry, she said. I know I handled this terribly. When I saw your application come through, I knew I wanted to hire you. You're brilliant, Maya. Your portfolio was the best we'd seen. But I couldn't hire my own sister while she was living in my apartment. It would have looked like favoritism. It would have undermined your achievements. So you kicked me out instead of just talking to me about it? I know. I know it was wrong. I just thought, if you didn't know about the job, if you got it on your own merit, then nobody could question whether you deserved it. Including you. I stared at her, emotions warring inside me. Anger at her methods. Relief that she wasn't just cruel. Frustration at her inability to communicate like a normal human being. You put me through hell, I said quietly. I thought you hated me. I thought I'd lost my last family member. Do you have any idea how alone I felt? Her eyes glistened with tears, the first real emotion I'd seen from her in years. I'm sorry. I thought I was helping. I thought I was being practical. I've never been good at the emotional stuff, you know that. Mom was always the one who knew what to say. I just wanted to do right by you, and I screwed it up. You really did. But some of the anger was draining away, replaced by exhaustion and tentative understanding. I'm still offering you the job, she said. If you want it. Not because you're my sister, because you're genuinely the best candidate. David confirmed it. But I understand if you'd rather work somewhere else, somewhere far away from me and my terrible judgment. I laughed, surprising both of us. It was a hollow sound, but it was something. You really are terrible at this. At all of this. At being a sister. At being human. I know. But you're trying. In your weird, backwards, emotionally constipated way, you're trying. She smiled weakly. Is that a yes? I thought about it. About the job, dream position at a dream company. About Rachel, complicated, damaged, trying her best with limited emotional tools. About our parents, who'd want us to figure this out, to be family even when it was hard. I'll take the job, I said. On one condition. Anything. We do therapy together. Sister therapy. Family therapy. Whatever it's called. Because we clearly can't communicate without destroying each other, and I don't want to live like that anymore. She blinked, surprised. Then nodded. Okay. Yes. I'll do that. And you extend my 30 days until I find an apartment that I actually like. Not the cheapest room available, not the first thing I can afford. Something I actually want to live in. Done. Take as long as you need. And you come to my apartment for dinner once a week. Every week. No work emergencies. No excuses. You show up and we eat together and we try to remember how to be sisters. Her lip trembled. Maya, I'd like that. I'd really like that. I pulled her into a hug, and she clung to me like I was the only solid thing in her world. Maybe I was. Maybe we were all each other had, two orphans trying to navigate adulthood without a map. I'm still mad at you, I murmured into her shoulder. I know. This doesn't fix everything. I know. But it's a start. Yeah. It's a start. We stood there in that corner of the ballroom, two sisters trying to figure out how to be family, while the celebration continued around us. Rachel's award sat forgotten on a nearby table, shiny and impressive and meaningless compared to this moment. David approached cautiously. Everything okay? Rachel wiped her eyes, pulling herself together. Yes. Everything's fine. Maya's joining the team, and we'll make sure there are proper boundaries and oversight to avoid any conflicts of interest. I'll be recusing myself from her direct supervision. Perfect. He looked relieved. Welcome aboard, Maya. Officially this time. I shook his hand, feeling the weight of my future settling into something real and solid. A job. A career. A chance to prove myself. And a sister who, despite everything, was trying. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. People congratulated Rachel on her award, congratulated me on my new position. Nobody mentioned the drama they'd witnessed. Corporate politeness kept the whispers quiet. Rachel gave me a ride home that night. We didn't talk much, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind we used to share before grief and responsibility had twisted us into strangers. I really am proud of you, she said as we pulled up to the apartment. I should have said that on graduation day. I should have been there. Yeah, you should have. I'll do better. I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to believe her. Either way, it felt like enough for now. I started at Apex the following Monday. David became my supervisor, and Rachel kept her professional distance, treating me like any other team member. It was strange at first, calling her Ms. Hartley in meetings, pretending we didn't share a bathroom and argue about whose turn it was to buy groceries. But it worked. I found an apartment 6 weeks later, a small one-bedroom with good light and space for a home office. Rachel helped me move, carrying boxes and assembling furniture with surprising competence. You sure you want to leave? She asked as we arranged books on a shelf. The apartments felt empty without you. I need my own space, Rachel. But I'll be at your place every Tuesday for dinner, remember? I remember. And she kept that promise. Every Tuesday, without fail, she'd show up at my door with takeout or groceries, and we'd cook together, eat together, slowly learn how to talk to each other again. Therapy helped. We found a counselor who specialized in family dynamics and grief. Those sessions were hard, pulling up old wounds, admitting fears and resentments we'd buried for years. But they were necessary. Rachel learned to communicate her intentions instead of assuming I'd understand her logic. I learned to ask questions instead of assuming the worst. We both learned that love could coexist with hurt, and that family was something you had to actively maintain, not just inherit. 6 months into my job, I led my first major project. Rachel sat in the presentation, and I could see the pride on her face even as she maintained professional composure. Afterward, she sent me a text, "Mom and Dad would be so proud." I'm proud. You're incredible. I cried in the bathroom for 5 minutes, then pulled myself together and went back to work. A year later, Rachel was promoted to vice president. She called me first, before anyone else, and we celebrated over cheap wine in my apartment, laughing about nothing and everything. Remember when you handed me that eviction notice? I said, slightly tipsy and nostalgic. She groaned. Don't remind me. Worst decision ever. Best decision ever, I corrected. It sucked, and your execution was terrible, but it forced us both to grow. Me into independence. You into actually expressing emotions occasionally. I express emotions. Name one emotion you've expressed today besides annoyance. She thought about it. Pride. I'm proud of us. Of what we've built. See? That wasn't so hard. We clinked glasses, two sisters who'd almost lost each other but found their way back through stubbornness and love and sheer determination not to let our parents' legacy die with them. The eviction notice sits in my desk drawer now, tucked between my diploma and a photo of Rachel and me from childhood. I keep it as a reminder, not of the pain, but of the transformation. Of how the worst moments can lead to the best outcomes if you're willing to push through them. Sometimes Rachel and I still mess up. She gets too focused on work and forgets to call. I get defensive and assume she's judging me. Old patterns die hard. But we've learned to apologize. To explain. To try again. That's all family really is, in the end. Trying again. Choosing each other even when it's difficult. Building something stronger from the broken pieces. I graduated into uncertainty, into betrayal, into the scariest moment of my adult life. And I came out the other side with a career I love, an apartment I'm proud of, and a sister who finally knows how to show up. So when people ask me about my graduation day, I tell them the truth: it was the worst and best day of my life. The day I lost my home and found my future. The day my sister broke my heart and, eventually, learned how to mend it. The day everything changed. And I wouldn't change a single thing.